The words fell from her lips like shards of glass. "Don't get any ideas, Julian," she whispered, her smile a thin, cruel line. "Marriage is for men who deserve it." The music of the wedding reception pulsed around us, a joyous, deafening beat, but her voice cut through it all with a chilling precision. I smiled back, a calm, almost placid expression that betrayed none of the seismic shift happening beneath my skin. I didn't get angry. I didn't argue. My mind, a place where I'd spent a decade analyzing worst-case scenarios, simply registered the data. This wasn't a joke. It was a verdict. And in that moment, she unknowingly handed me the very information I'd been waiting for. For 2 years, I had been in a relationship with Claire. From the outside, we were a perfect picture. A nice house, a vibrant social life, a couple who had it all figured out. I run a risk management firm, a profession that has honed my ability to spot the fatal flaws in a foundation before the whole structure comes crashing down. Claire, on the other hand, came from a world built on the illusion of stability, a family that valued appearances above all else. They saw my self-made success as a quirk, my quiet confidence as a lack of social grace. They never approved, and for the longest time, I thought Claire was different. I thought she was my refuge from their world of quiet judgment and barred compliments. But the cracks had begun to show over the last year. They were small at first, like hairline fractures in a wall. Little comments disguised as jokes, a sneer about the vintage of my car, a condescending remark about my taste in clothing, a subtle put-down about my friends. I heard them, every single one, and I filed them away. I wasn't an idiot, and I certainly wasn't going to be a convenient funding source for a life that disrespected mine. Our arrangement was simple. I owned the house, and she contributed a set amount for bills from her marketing job. It was a partnership, but I was beginning to realize it was an unequal one. I had already made a private decision. If things didn't change, I was going to end it. I was just waiting for that one undeniable piece of evidence, the final data point. And it arrived in the most beautiful, most brutal way possible. My best friend Daniel was marrying the love of his life, Maria. The ceremony was a celebration of genuine, honest love. Claire, of course, was on her best behavior, the picture of the perfect, supportive partner. But as the champagne flowed at the reception and the music swelled, the mask slipped. The moment she leaned in and whispered those words, I knew it was over. She saw me not as a partner, but as a placeholder. I didn't argue. I didn't explode. I simply looked at her, smiled, and said, "Of course not." The smile on her face tightened in a way that suggested she thought she had won. She was so sure of her power, so certain she was the one holding all the cards. She had no idea that I was about to walk away from the table, or rather, that I was about to set the whole casino ablaze. The rest of the night passed in a blur of performative normality. I laughed with our friends, danced with her, and played the part of the devoted boyfriend. But all the while, my mind was working with cold, logistical precision, crafting a plan. The final act of the evening, the bouquet toss, was about to become the grand finale of our story. I just needed to find a few key players to make it happen. My mind was already assembling the cast, the props, and the perfect musical cue. Claire was about to get the one thing she craved above all else, a public moment. But it wouldn't be the one she had envisioned. It would be something far more dramatic, far more memorable, and far more definitive. I needed a few key players. First, I found Maria. My voice was low and urgent as I told her what Claire had said. Maria's face went from concerned to furious. "She did not," she seethed. I told her the plan. Instead of tossing the bouquet, she was to create a moment A wicked smile spread across her face. "This is going to be so much better," she said. Next, I found my sister, Laura, a lawyer with a flair for the dramatic. I gave her my car keys and instructions to go to my house, pack an overnight bag, and retrieve a small, important box from my closet. She just nodded, understanding everything without me having to say a word. The final piece was the DJ. I gave him a $100 bill and a very specific musical cue. He gave me a knowing wink. As the bouquet toss began, I watched Claire and her friends gather at the front. The DJ announced the single ladies, and Maria stood on the stage. But on one, she didn't throw it. She turned and walked straight into the crowd, passing over Claire without a glance. She stopped in front of a woman near the back, Hannah, a friend from college I had recently reconnected with. She handed the bouquet directly to her. The crowd was stunned. Claire's face was a mask of disbelief. Then the music cut out. A single spotlight swung from the stage and landed on me. I started walking, past the confused guests, past Claire, who stared at me with an open mouth. I walked straight to Hannah. My sister Laura appeared as if by magic, handing me the small box. I got down on one knee in front of everyone. I opened the box to reveal my grandmother's ring. My voice, amplified by a microphone the DJ had handed me, was clear and steady. "Hannah, I've realized I want a partner who deserves the best. I know this is insane, but I'd rather take a crazy chance on a future with you than spend another day in a relationship where I'm not valued." I paused. The entire room was silent. "Will you marry me?" The entire room was silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Hannah, still clutching the bouquet, was a study of shock, her eyes wide as she looked at me, then at the ring, then at Maria, who was giving her a frantic, tearful thumbs up. Claire, across the dance floor, looked like she had been turned to stone, her smug smile finally gone, replaced by an expression of utter, soul-crushing disbelief. The world held its breath, waiting. A slow smile, hesitant at first, spread across her face. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but amplified by the microphone that had suddenly become our shared lifeline. "Yes, I will." The room exploded. It was a cacophony of cheers, applause, and relieved laughter. As I slid the ring on her finger, it felt more real than anything I had ever done. The adrenaline of the past hour, the cold, calculating precision of the plan, it all evaporated, replaced by a warmth that spread through me from the touch of her hand. But the beautiful chaos was not for everyone. A sound like that of a wounded animal ripped through the air. Claire. Her facade shattered completely. She began screaming, a torrent of accusations and insults aimed at me, at Hannah, at Maria. She called me a monster, a liar, a manipulator. Her own friends tried to calm her, but the tide of public opinion had turned so swiftly and so completely against her that they were left stranded. The story of the proposal, I later learned, became a legend. My loyal friends, Daniel and Maria, made sure the truth circulated. About Claire's condescending comment, about her disrespect, about how I had simply taken her at her word. In her desperate attempt to assert her social standing, Claire became a pariah. She was the woman so arrogant that her boyfriend proposed to another woman in front of her. She eventually had to move back with her parents, her job becoming untenable in a world where social connections were everything. As for me and Hannah, the fake engagement turned into a real relationship faster than either of us could have ever expected. The sheer absurdity of that night, the shared secret, the exhilarating freedom of the whole act, it forged a bond between us stronger than any I had ever known. We spent the next month getting to know each other not as old college friends, but as two people who had found each other in the most unconventional way possible. a whirlwind of laughter and late-night conversations. The final days of that month we sat together on a bench overlooking the city. She turned to me, her hand in mine. Was it all a performance, Julian?" she asked softly. I thought about the question. It had started that way, a carefully executed play to get out of a toxic relationship. But something had changed. The line between what was real and what was planned had blurred. The ring on her finger, once a prop, was now a symbol of something genuine. "It started as a performance," I said, looking out at the city lights. "A logical contingency plan. But the real surprise wasn't in the plan, Hannah. It was in the unscripted moment that followed. The moment I realized I wasn't acting anymore." We ended up getting married a few months later. It was a small, quiet ceremony on a beach. There was no grand performance, no drama. Just a real, honest commitment between two people who respect and admire each other. The greatest lesson I took from that month of chaos and calculated risk was this. When people show you who they are, don't try to convince yourself they're someone else. Just listen. Claire told me I didn't deserve to be married to her. And in the end, I realized she was absolutely right. I deserved so much better. She wanted to be the final word on my worth. Instead, she just became the first sentence in a much better story. And that, in itself, is a kind of poetic justice, isn't it?